They don't want you to know this, but every ancient culture, spiritual text, and sacred tradition has warned us. Evil spirits are real, and they prey on the unaware. Whether you call them demons, negative energies, or dark entities, they are not just figments of imagination or superstition. These forces thrive in fear, chaos, and weakness, and they subtly infiltrate your life when you're most vulnerable. But here's the shocking truth. Protection is not about rituals or symbols alone. It's about spiritual awareness, energy mastery, and inner clarity. If you've ever felt drained for no reason, plagued by anxiety that isn't yours, or shadowed by something you can't explain, this message will awaken you. This is your guide to understanding what these dark forces really are and how to shield your soul with unshakable power and truth. Evil spirits thrive in unawareness not because they are more powerful than us, but because we allow them access through the blind spots of our own consciousness. They exist and operate in dimensions that are subtle, psychological, emotional, and energetic. Realms that most people neglect because they're not visible to the naked eye. And that very ignorance is their playground. Imagine living in a house where some rooms have never been cleaned or explored. You don't go there. You don't think about them. And yet those forgotten corners slowly rot, attract infestation, and decay begins from within. That's exactly how evil spirits work. They inhabit the unseen corners of your soul, the shadows of your unresolved thoughts, the chaos you suppress, the emotions you refuse to feel. They don't need to attack from the outside when your inside is already unguarded. Most people assume that protection from evil spirits means wearing crystals, burning incense, or chanting ancient words, but the truth is far deeper. If your awareness is clouded, if your perception is dulled, if you've numbed yourself to pain, intuition, and higher knowing, you become a vessel ready for occupation. These spirits don't arrive with horns and fire. They come in quietly, as self-doubt, as chronic fatigue, as intrusive thoughts, as addictions you can't shake, as anxiety that never leaves, as bitterness that tastes like your own voice. They use your blindness to build their stronghold within you, and they grow roots in your unconscious behaviors. The spiritual world operates under the law of resonance. You attract what you are unaware of and aligned with. When you don't question your emotional reactions, when you move through life reacting instead of reflecting, when you don't recognize where your feelings originate from or what energy you are absorbing from others, you are essentially living with an open back door in a bad neighborhood. Evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it's a whisper of jealousy, the temptation to lie, a pleasure that feels good but leads to shame. It doesn't crash through the front door. It seeps in through neglected thoughts and unnoticed agreements you've made with despair, anger, or revenge. Unawareness makes you vulnerable because it disconnects you from your higher self. The part of you that sees clearly, loves deeply, and knows truth intuitively. And when you are disconnected from truth, you are easily manipulated by illusion. Demonic energies are masters of illusion. They masquerade as things you want, whisper lies you think are your own thoughts, and distract you just enough to keep you looping in low vibration. Most people walk around unaware of how their childhood wounds, unspoken resentments, or unresolved guilt open them up to attachments, energy drains, or even possession. Not the horror movie kind, but the subtle kind that robs you of joy, peace, and power. Unawareness is not just ignorance. It's a lack of discipline in maintaining inner clarity. It's scrolling for hours while your soul begs for stillness. It's allowing your mind to replay fear instead of choosing courage. It's ignoring your body's signals, your spirit's cries, and the guidance that constantly whispers to slow down and listen. Evil thrives when you don't. But here's the miracle. Once you become aware, truly aware, of how your energy works, what influences your emotions, how your thoughts are shaped, and where your power resides, evil spirits lose access instantly. The light of awareness is the death of darkness. You don't have to fight them, you just have to see them. Shine the flashlight of attention into every room of your inner world. Speak the truth about your wounds. Sit still with your thoughts. Question your fears. Observe your anger. Name your shame. Awareness doesn't mean perfection. It means presence. And when you are fully present in your being, nothing dark can occupy your soul without your permission. Evil spirits are opportunists, not gods. They are parasites that can only live where your soul has been forgotten. But when you return to yourself, when you wake up, when you take responsibility for your energy, your choices, and your healing, you become spiritually sovereign. And no demon, no matter how ancient or clever, can survive in the presence of a fully awake soul. They exploit your emotional wounds not with force, but with familiarity, slipping into the cracks of your unresolved pain like water through a broken foundation, seeping quietly, invisibly, until your very sense of self is saturated with confusion, heaviness, and spiritual exhaustion that you can't explain. And then the fear sets in. The fear sets in, limiting your possibilities with incomplete thoughts. That fear tries. Evil spirits do not crash into your life through grand entrances. They creep in gently through the trauma you've tried to forget, through the heartbreak you never healed from, through the shame you buried so deep you began calling it your personality. Every wound you avoid, every emotion you suppress, every painful memory you leave unexamined becomes fertile ground for dark energies to grow. They don't create the pain. They colonize what's already wounded. That lingering bitterness toward a parent, that betrayal from a friend you never forgave, that unspoken grief from loss. They become emotional portals, open gateways that attract low-frequency entities whose only job is to keep you stuck, silent, afraid, and disconnected from your light. Demons feed on repetition. They love the cycle of self-pity, the loop of victimhood, the echo of your unhealed stories, because these cycles create emotional residue, and that residue becomes their sustenance. The longer you stay hurt without healing, the more they settle in, wrapping themselves around your identity until you begin to believe that your pain is who you are. You start to think, I am anxious, I am angry, I am unworthy. But those are not identities. They're wounds being echoed by something that wants to keep you bound. Evil spirits don't just attach to pain, they speak through it. They mimic your inner voice, turning up the volume on your insecurities until you can no longer tell where your pain ends and their influence begins. That's why self-sabotage feels so personal, because it uses your memories against you. Your own mind becomes the battlefield, and unless you heal those wounds, unless you face the emotional truth with courage and compassion, you will unconsciously act on thoughts that aren't even yours. Have you ever wondered why, just when you're about to break through, just when things are finally going well, you feel an urge to destroy, to retreat, to isolate, to lash out? That's the wound speaking, amplified by the spirit that latched onto it. These entities thrive when you stay numb, distracted, or dismissive of your own suffering. That's why modern life is filled with noise, so you never go quiet enough to feel what's really hurting, because to feel is to awaken, and awakening begins the eviction process. Your pain is not the problem, your avoidance is. Every wound is a doorway, not just for demons to enter, but for healing to be accessed. But healing isn't always soft. It demands that you revisit what you swore you'd never feel again. It asks you to cry, to scream, to sit in silence with the ghosts of your past and say, I see you. I no longer fear you. I no longer serve you. That's when the energy begins to shift. That's when the grip loosens. Evil spirits cannot survive in the presence of truth. And truth lives in your emotional honesty. When you stop numbing yourself, when you stop blaming others and start owning your story, not with guilt, but with love, you begin to reclaim your soul territory. You stop being a house with open windows and start becoming a temple with sacred walls. Protection isn't just about keeping darkness out. It's about becoming so whole, so integrated, that darkness has nowhere to hide inside you. That's why the path of healing is sacred. It doesn't just restore your peace, it removes the feeding grounds of evil. You begin to see your anger not as a flaw, but as a wound that needed protection. You begin to see your sadness not as weakness, but as the body's call for release. And you must become your power. The body needs to be strong and healthy. 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 The body needs to be strong, and in that understanding, you reclaim fragments of yourself that were stolen through pain. When you heal your emotional wounds, you aren't just making peace with your past. You are cutting off the energetic food supply of spiritual parasites that can only survive in your suffering. So the next time a wound resurfaces, don't run from it, sit with it, listen to it. Ask what it needs to feel whole, because every tear you shed, in truth, is an exorcism. Every moment of honest grief is spiritual armor being reforged. And every time you choose to feel rather than flee, you're not just healing, you're protecting yourself in the most powerful way possible, by making your soul a place where only light can live. Your energy field is your armor, and the most overlooked truth in spiritual protection is that your aura, your energetic presence, is not only real, but constantly interacting with everything around you, absorbing, deflecting, and transmitting vibrations whether you're aware of it or not. And in a world full of unseen forces, both divine and deceptive, it is this invisible layer around your physical body that acts as your first line of defense against dark, parasitic energies, entities, and tempties, and influences. And just like your immune system protects your body from disease, your energy field protects your soul from spiritual contamination. But here's the catch. Just as the immune system can weaken through poor habits, stress, and neglect, your aura too can thin, crack, or become contaminated when you live unconsciously, emotionally overwhelmed, spiritually disconnected, or surrounded by people and environments that constantly pull you into lower vibrational states. And most people don't realize that every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every word you speak, and every environment you immerse yourself in either strengthens or weakens your energetic armor. Which means that protection isn't just about prayer or rituals, it's about lifestyle, intention, and the frequency you consistently embody. Because evil spirits don't just latch onto people randomly. They are attracted to vibrational matches. Anger attracts anger. Fear attracts manipulation. Despair attracts entities that amplify your helplessness. So when your energy field is clogged with unresolved trauma, chaotic thoughts, toxic relationships, and unconscious behaviors, you become an open signal for these forces to attach, feed, and influence you without your conscious permission. And the real power lies in understanding that your energy field can be cultivated, cleansed, and fortified daily, not through fear, but through awareness and discipline, not through temptation or starting with emotional hygiene. Because emotions are the fuel of your energetic signature. Joy, gratitude, love, peace. These uplift your frequency and create a luminous, almost impenetrable aura, while resentment, guilt, jealousy, and rage create weak spots, holes through which spiritual parasites can enter. And this is why mastering your emotional state isn't just personal development, it's spiritual warfare. And maintaining a high frequency aura doesn't mean pretending to be happy all the time, but rather owning your feelings, expressing them consciously, transmuting pain into wisdom, and choosing not to live in reaction but in response, in presence, and in alignment. And equally important is the cleansing of your energetic space. Just like you shower your body, you must also clear the debris from your aura. And this can be done through practices like meditation, breath work, grounding in nature, salt baths, sound frequencies, chanting, or simply by spending time in silence, where your soul can breathe, recalibrate, and expand without interference. And we must understand that our energy is also affected by who we spend time with. Humans are like tuning forks, and if you constantly surround yourself with people who gossip, complain, manipulate, or drain your energy, your field will gradually adjust to that frequency, unless you consciously protect and recalibrate, because spiritual hygiene also includes boundaries, saying no, walking away from chaos, protecting your peace as if your life depends on it. Because in truth it does, and perhaps the most powerful way to armor your aura is through alignment. When your actions align with your highest truth, when you live with purpose, when you follow divine principles of compassion, humility, courage, and integrity, your energy becomes coherent, sharp, clear, and radiant. And this radiance acts as a spiritual repellent, a light that repulses darkness effortlessly, because dark forces cannot attach to a being who is self-awareness, heart-centered, and energetically sovereign. And this is why truly awakened individuals seem untouchable, because their energy is not chaotic, not confused, not splintered. They know who they are. They take care of their vessel. They discipline their mind. They honor their emotions. They purify their space. They walk in truth. And that alignment creates an aura so strong, so luminous, that lower entities cannot penetrate it. And so if you truly want to protect yourself from evil forces, you must stop looking outside and begin within. Build your energy field as you would build a sacred temple, with clarity, reverence, discipline, and devotion. Because when your inner world is clean, your energy shines. And when your energy shines, darkness cannot stay. Your aura, after all, is not just your protection. Your aura, after all, is not just your protection. It is your message to the unseen world, declaring what energies are welcome and what will be rejected, with the full force of your awakened light. They masquerade as your thoughts, slipping in so subtly that you never question their origin, never pause to ask, is this voice really mine? And that's the dark genius of how evil spirits operate. Not by shouting from the shadows, but by whispering through the familiar, using your own inner dialogue as a disguise, mimicking your tone, your fears, your past experiences, until their influence feels indistinguishable from your own thinking. And before you even realize it, your mind becomes a battlefield where the enemy wears your face and speaks in your voice. It begins innocently, just a passing negative thought, a flicker of self-doubt, a hint of anxiety. But instead of brushing it off, you entertain it, ruminate, spiral, and that's when they dig deeper, rooting into your subconscious, subtly directing your focus toward fear, guilt, anger, and despair, because demons don't always come as nightmares or apparitions. They often come as overthinking, obsessive loops, irrational guilt, chronic self-sabotage, and emotional heaviness that doesn't align with the truth of who you are. And this is because the mind, when unguarded, becomes a playground for spiritual manipulation, especially when you've been conditioned to believe that every thought you think must be yours or must be true. But thoughts can be implanted, inspired, and distorted by unseen forces, especially when your energy is low, your boundaries are weak, and your emotional state is fragile, which is why mastering your mind is not just a matter of mental health, it's spiritual survival. Because the more passive you are with your thoughts, the easier it is for external influences to hijack your inner world. And they do this most effectively through repetition. The same toxic narrative playing over and over. You're not good enough. Nobody loves you. It's too late. You'll never change, until it feels like fact, when in reality, it's a spiritual infection masquerading as a mental habit. And here's the most dangerous part. The longer these voices go unchecked, the more you align your behavior, your decisions, your identity with them, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where the lie becomes your life. And this is not just psychology. It's spiritual warfare disguised as overthinking. Because when you are so entangled in internal noise that you can't hear your intuition, your truth, or the voice of your soul, you become disconnected from divine guidance and vulnerable to deception. And while you may think, it's just how I think, consider this. Would a soul connected to love, truth, and divine power speak to itself with hatred, fear, and limitation? No. Because your true inner voice is calm, clear, wise, and empowering. Anything else is interference. And recognizing this interference is the first step to reclaiming your mental sovereignty. Because once you see the imposter thoughts for what they are, foreign invaders feeding off your energy, you can begin to detach, observe, and reclaim control. But it requires vigilance, awareness, and spiritual discernment. The ability to pause and ask, does this thought uplift or destroy me? Does it align with my highest self or with fear? And in doing so, you create space. And in that space, the truth begins to return. You begin to realize that not every thought is worth believing. Not every emotion needs to be owned. And not every inner voice deserves your trust. Because your mind is not a public square, it's sacred territory, and you must guard it as such. Through meditation, prayer, conscious inner dialogue, and refusal to entertain thoughts that diminish your light. And once you train yourself to recognize these false voices, to challenge them, to reject them, to replace them with affirmations grounded in truth, you break the spell. And the spirits that fed off your confusion begin to lose their grip, because they cannot survive in clarity, in presence, in the light of your conscious awareness. So next time you hear that inner critic, that persistent doubt, that urge to self-destruct, don't just analyze it, question it, confront it, disown it if it doesn't serve your highest truth. And remember that protecting your mind is not about controlling every thought, but discerning which thoughts are yours, which are programming, and which are spiritual parasites dressed in your vocabulary. Because when you finally reclaim your mental landscape, when you speak to yourself like someone you love, when you refuse to identify with the voices of fear and deception, you don't just think differently. You vibrate differently, live differently, and become spiritually untouchable. Because the greatest protection you'll ever have isn't outside of you. It's the clarity and authority of a mind that knows who it belongs to. They masquerade as your thoughts, not with thunderous declarations, but with quiet familiarity, slipping past your awareness under the camouflage of your own voice, using your memory, your doubts, your insecurities, your fears, and your wounds as tools to shape and distort your inner dialogue, so precisely and so subtly that you begin to believe the lies are truth, and the voice of the enemy becomes indistinguishable from your own inner self, whispering messages like, "I'm not good enough, no one cares about me, why even try?" And this deception is the most insidious form of spiritual attack, because it doesn't come from outside. It hijacks your internal world, turning your mind into a weapon against your own soul. And most people don't even realize it's happening. They assume their thoughts are naturally arising, unaware that dark parasitic energies often use thought as their primary vehicle of influence, because they don't need to possess your body if they can influence your decisions, your beliefs, and your identity through thought patterns that weaken you over time. Thoughts that make you question your worth, isolate you from love, sabotage your purpose, and keep you in cycles of fear, guilt, and self-destruction. And once you internalize these thoughts and identify with them, they no longer need to whisper. You start repeating them to yourself, reinforcing the same energetic frequency that attracted them in the first place, keeping you locked in a feedback loop of spiritual vulnerability. And that's how demons work. Not through overt attacks, but through subtle seduction, wrapping their influence in logic, memory, or emotion so that it becomes difficult to detect. And the danger lies in your identification with the voice, because once you believe it's you, you stop resisting it, you stop questioning it, and it begins to define you, shaping your reality with lies dressed as introspection. And this is why the path to spiritual protection must begin with thought awareness, learning to become an observer of your own mind, questioning the source and intention behind every thought, especially the ones that create shame, despair, rage, or hopelessness. Because the truth is, not all thoughts are yours. Not all emotions are signals from your soul. And not every mental narrative is aligned with your higher self. And the moment you create space between yourself and the thought, the moment you ask who is speaking, who benefits if I believe this, you begin to break the spell. Because the authority of evil spirits thrives in unconscious agreement, in your willingness to accept their influence as your own. But once you awaken to the manipulation and begin challenging the narrative, their power begins to collapse, and you start to reassert your dominion over your mind, not through force, but through truth, presence, and spiritual alignment. So what I will say is this: start through truth, presence, and spiritual alignment, which requires you to cleanse the mental environment regularly, to nourish your consciousness with light-filled messages, truth-anchored affirmations, sacred texts, prayer, meditation, and silence. Yes, silence. Because in silence, you hear what was always underneath the noise, and that's where clarity returns. That's where your real voice speaks, the voice of your soul, of God, of higher truth that never condemns, never shames, never fears, but reminds you of your divinity, your power, your purpose. And in that moment of awareness, you realize that for all the fear and chaos demons create, they are nothing without your attention and belief. They require your consent, your alignment with their frequency. And when you stop identifying with the thoughts they plant, you strip them of their influence. Because these spirits may be ancient and cunning, but they are also desperate and weak when faced with a mind that knows its source, a soul that chooses truth over fear, and a heart that remembers its light. And so you must treat your thoughts as sacred ground, guarding them not only with awareness, but with authority, taking captive every idea that does not honor your higher self, and declaring that your mind is not a public domain for wandering spirits, but a holy space for divine guidance, creativity, clarity, and peace. Because when you reclaim your thoughts, you reclaim your life. And when you speak to yourself with the same love, compassion, and strength that God speaks into you, demons lose their voice. Their mask falls off. And what once masqueraded as your inner world is exposed for what it truly was. An illusion, designed to keep you small, but now shattered by the brilliance of your awakened, sovereign, and spiritually protected mind. You open portals through your habits and environment far more often than you realize, not through dark rituals or dramatic ceremonies, but through your daily choices, unconscious routines, and the spaces you inhabit. Because every action you repeat, every piece of content you consume, every word you speak, every room you dwell in, carries an energetic frequency that either elevates you toward light or pulls you deeper into darkness. And evil spirits, negative entities, or demonic forces don't need your permission in the way you think. They enter quietly, through repetition, through resonance, through the invisible doors you unknowingly leave wide open when you constantly engage in low vibrational behaviors, feed your mind with fear-based or violent entertainment, surround yourself with toxic people, or live in emotional states like shame, lust, bitterness, or rage without awareness. And what many don't understand is that spiritual realms are governed by laws of alignment and permission. What you allow, you attract. What you tolerate, you begin to embody, and the environment around you is never neutral. Your bedroom, your car, your office, your digital feeds, your music playlist, your friend group, your diet, all of it either strengthens your spiritual armor or fractures it, creating cracks through which demonic energies can enter and influence you. And the more you normalize the abnormal, the more you make a home for these energies, because every time you choose comfort over clarity, distraction over discipline, or chaos over calm, you shift your frequency toward disorder, and spirits of disorder thrive in homes without spiritual order. Homes filled with clutter, loud noise, constant stimulation, and emotional tension become breeding grounds for spiritual parasites. And when your habits include substances that alter your consciousness, like drugs or alcohol, your energetic boundaries weaken instantly, opening you up to attachments that enter while you are unaware, and then remain long after the high is gone, feeding off your confusion, depression, addiction, or fatigue. And the same goes for the media you consume. Watching shows or movies filled with violence, fear, lust, or occult imagery may seem harmless, but these images imprint on your subconscious. They lower your frequency and normalize spiritual gateways that used to be guarded by your intuition, and before you know it, you feel anxious for no reason, plagued by nightmares, unable to sleep, moody, restless, angry, or disconnected. And it's not random. It's residue, energetic remnants of what you've allowed into your field again and again until it becomes familiar. And once it becomes familiar, it becomes difficult to distinguish your energy from the energy of what's inhabiting you. And this is where it becomes dangerous, because when you forget how to feel your own peace, your own clarity, your own soul, you begin to identify with the heaviness, the confusion, the darkness. And the entities feeding off that energy win without ever having to reveal themselves. And this is why spiritual protection is not about being paranoid, but about being precise, intentional, and spiritually clean in the environments you create and the habits you normalize, because every habit is either a ritual for your healing or a ritual for your destruction, and every environment is either a sanctuary or a battleground, depending on how it's maintained, blessed, and used. And if you want to truly protect yourself, you must begin by clearing your space, physically, emotionally, digitally, and energetically, because demons hide in what you refuse to examine. Because demons hide in what you refuse to examine, in the clutter you never clean, the habits you excuse, the relationships you don't end, the content you binge without question. And when you start to purify these layers, when you replace the chaos with calm, the filth with beauty, the noise with stillness, and the addictive patterns with sacred ones, you start to shift the frequency of your life, and darkness can no longer find a home in you because you are no longer aligned with what feeds it. And spiritual boundaries are not just about saying no. They are about redesigning your life so that no agreement with evil can be made in silence. And the more disciplined you become in your daily life, the more authority you hold in the spiritual realm. Because demons don't fear your religion. They fear your alignment, your purity, your clarity, and your refusal to participate in the patterns that keep you bound. So examine your life. What music do you play when you're sad? What do you watch when you're alone? What emotions run your day? What habits rule your mornings and nights? Because every one of these is either closing a portal or opening one. And you get to decide what you permit, what you cleanse, and what you protect. Because your life is a temple, and the doors stay open or shut based on the rituals you live by daily. So if you truly want to shield yourself from spiritual harm, stop asking only for divine protection and start living in a way that doesn't invite darkness in the first place. Spiritual weakness makes you a target, not because evil spirits are stronger than you, but because they are opportunistic, always watching, always seeking cracks in your foundation, moments when your guard is down, when your discipline is slack, when your awareness is cloudy, and they move in like vultures, sensing vulnerability, feeding, not on your body, but on your spiritual laziness, your inner confusion, and your emotional chaos. They don't need to overpower you if you've already abandoned your spiritual post. If you've already stopped praying, stopped reflecting, stopped practicing the rituals that strengthen your energy and deepen your connection to divine truth. And this is the silent trap so many fall into, mistaking spiritual strength for a momentary feeling rather than a daily commitment, believing that peace or clarity will simply last without tending to it, maintaining it, and fighting for it. When in reality, your spiritual life is like a garden, and without constant care, weeds, doubts, temptations, distractions, negative energies grow wildly. And before you know it, the territory of your soul becomes overrun with forces that were once small enough to pluck, now deeply rooted because of neglect. And spiritual weakness doesn't always look like evil. It often looks like apathy, avoidance, passivity, making excuses for unhealthy behavior, letting your inner fire dim quietly under the noise and pressure of modern life, forgetting to nourish your soul because you're too caught up in scrolling, stressing, surviving. And this weakness is exactly what dark entities look for, because a distracted soul is a defenseless one. A confused mind is an open gateway, and a heart without spiritual structure is vulnerable to suggestion, infiltration, and manipulation. You don't have to be evil to invite evil. You just have to be empty, exhausted, unguarded. Because spiritual predators seek out the path of least resistance. And when your faith is superficial, your rituals are inconsistent, your values are unclear, and your energy is unprotected, you are broadcasting to the unseen world that you are an easy target, and these forces will exploit every weakness, your unhealed trauma, your unforgiveness, your unspoken fears, your secret addictions, anything that keeps your spirit fragmented and your mind distracted, because division within is their entry point. And while you might feel that nothing is wrong on the surface, the spiritual erosion begins subtly. A loss of passion, a sense of numbness, a heaviness you can't explain, increasingly toxic thoughts, emotional instability, a lack of motivation to pray, to meditate, to seek truth. And then come the darker patterns: self-sabotage, sudden anger, jealousy, despair. And you start to spiral, not realizing that what you thought was just a slump is actually a spiritual attack made possible by your spiritual disengagement. And that's why spiritual strength is not a luxury. It's a shield, And every time you delay your healing, ignore your intuition, betray your own boundaries, or let toxic energy remain in your life unchecked, you are weakening your spiritual immune system and allowing external forces to move in with ease. And let's be clear, spiritual strength doesn't mean being perfect. It means being present, consistent, awake, and willing to fight for your peace, your alignment, your truth every single day. Because a spiritually strong person is not one who never struggles, but one who returns to the altar of truth no matter how many times they fall, who maintains sacred practices even when they don't feel like it, who chooses discipline over desire, prayer over panic, reflection over reaction, and love over ego, and in doing so they build an unshakable foundation that no demon can enter, no darkness can collapse, because they've closed every door through awareness, healed every wound through courage, and stand rooted in divine power, not because they are immune to attack, but because they have chosen to become untouchable through alignment, through devotion, through truth. And that is the path forward, not waiting for peace to appear, but forging it through daily spiritual commitment, understanding that the war for your soul is real, that there are forces actively working to keep you blind, tired, afraid, disconnected and small, and your only defense is the strength you built by choosing your spirit every day, especially when it's hard, especially when it's quiet, because those moments define whether you stand as a fortress of light or an open field for anything to enter. And you must ask yourself now, not later, are you building walls that protect your soul, or are you leaving yourself exposed because you've forgotten that your spiritual life is not just about belief but about battle readiness? And every moment you show up, you strengthen your spirit, and every moment you ignore it, you become easier prey for things that don't care how nice or good you are. They only care how unguarded you've become. Divine connection is the ultimate protection. Not just a comforting idea or poetic phrase, but an absolute spiritual law that transcends culture, language, and belief system, because when you are deeply, consistently, and wholeheartedly connected to the divine, whether you call it God's source, creator, or higher self, you create a radiant shield around your soul that no evil spirit, dark entity, or malevolent force can penetrate, for darkness cannot dwell where light is fully present. There is darkness not to feel the darkness, but to detect it. When you are deeply, consistently, and wholeheartedly connected to the divine, when you are deeply, consistently, and honest and fully understand who you are destined to be, you can feel it in the air or in the body. When you are deeply consistent, and divine presence is the purest, most powerful light in existence. It is the frequency that dissolves illusion, burns away deception, and silences the voices of fear, shame, doubt, and despair that demons love to exploit. Because when you are truly aligned with divine will and anchored in divine truth, your energy becomes untouchable, not because you're perfect, but because you're plugged into the infinite, into the very force that designed the laws of the universe and governs all things with wisdom and love. And this connection doesn't come from shallow ritual or blind belief. It comes from intimacy, from reverence, from surrendering your ego daily and choosing to walk in the presence of something greater than your human mind can fully comprehend. And it is in this sacred connection that your true power is revealed, not the power to control, but the power to remain calm in chaos, the power to stand still in storms, the power to know that even when the world trembles, you are protected, not by chance, but by covenant, because the divine does not abandon those who seek it sincerely, who walk in humility, who strive to live in truth, compassion, and service. And when your heart is open to divine guidance, your mind becomes clear, your intuition sharp, your emotions stable, and your spirit radiates such peace that dark energies flee without confrontation, not because you're fighting them, but because your very presence becomes uninhabitable to them. And this is the real spiritual warfare, not screaming at demons, but outgrowing the frequencies they need to survive, outshining the shadows by being so filled with divine light that you don't just protect yourself, you transform the space around you, creating ripples of healing, clarity, and calm wherever you go. And that's what divine connection does. It doesn't just keep evil out, it draws truth in, aligns your life with divine timing, opens doors meant for you, closes ones that would destroy you, and whispers guidance that no entity can mimic. For the voice of the divine is unmistakable when you learn how to listen, not with your ears, but with your soul. And this listening begins in stillness, in solitude, in the quiet moments where the world fades and you remember who you are beyond your name, your role, your past, your pain. You are a spiritual being having a human experience, not alone, not forgotten, but divinely guided, divinely held, and divinely equipped to walk through this world without fear. And when you pray, when you meditate, when you express gratitude, when you live in alignment with sacred principles like forgiveness, love, integrity, humility, and courage, you are not just being a good person. You are activating protection, reinforcing the energetic boundary that only divine connection can sustain. Because evil spirits do not flee from positive thinking, they flee from spiritual authority, and spiritual authority only comes from alignment with the source of all things. And the more you prioritize this relationship, not just on Sundays, not just in crisis, but daily, moment by moment, the stronger your field becomes, the clearer your discernment becomes, and the less room there is for deception, confusion, and chaos. Because divine connection brings divine order, divine wisdom, and divine covering, and in that covering you are safe. Not because you will never face challenges, but because you will never face them alone. And even when attacked, even when tempted, even when shaken, your foundation will remain unbroken. Because it is not built on sand, but on sacred rock, on truth that does not change, on love that does not fail, and on a presence that is with you even when you forget it's there. Because the moment the conflict brings change or love that does not fail, and on a presence that is with you even when you forget it's there, waiting patiently for your return. Because the divine does not need perfection, it desires relationship. And when that relationship becomes your anchor, you no longer chase protection from fear. You become the embodiment of it, walking as a temple of light, a vessel of peace, a warrior of clarity. And no matter how dark the world becomes, that light within you will always be your greatest defense. Because the moment you reconnect to the divine is the moment all darkness begins to lose its hold. The dark truth is this: evil spirits and demons are not just stories from ancient texts or horror films. They are real, conscious forces that operate in the unseen, feeding off fear, confusion, emotional wounds, spiritual laziness, and unawareness. They don't need to knock down your door when you're already leaving it open through unhealed thoughts, unhealed pain, toxic habits, and disconnected living. But the greater truth, the liberating truth, is that you are not powerless. You were never meant to fight darkness with fear, but with alignment, awareness, and authority rooted in divine truth. Here are the core pieces of wisdom to carry with you. Guard your mind as sacred space. Every thought is a seed. Weed out what doesn't belong. If a thought tears you down or whispers fear, it's not of God. Don't let it take root. Heal your emotional wounds before they become spiritual portals. The demons you ignore grow in silence. The ones you face with truth and compassion are cast out by light. Clean your energy field through daily spiritual hygiene. Prayer, meditation, grounding, intentional silence, gratitude and forgiveness are not luxuries. They are armor. Discipline your habits and environment. Darkness loves disorder. Make your life a sacred space where low vibrational energy has no room to hide. Strengthen your spirit through consistent connection with the divine. Don't just call on God when you are afraid. Walk with the divine daily, and fear will have no place in you. Stand in spiritual authority. You are not weak. You are not helpless. When you remember who you are, divinely guided, loved, and chosen, you no longer bow to deception. Choose truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Demons flourish in lies, especially the ones we tell ourselves. Shine light on your shadows. That is how they disappear. You don't need superstition or fear-based rituals to be safe. You need awareness, intention, spiritual discipline, and above all, an unshakable connection to the divine. Evil cannot enter a soul that knows who it belongs to. Now we end the speech with closing prayer for protection, clarity, and strength. Heavenly Father, divine source of all light and truth, I come before you with humility and reverence, acknowledging the unseen battles around and within me. I ask you now to cover me with your divine protection, cleanse my heart of fear, my mind of confusion, and my soul of anything that does not belong to you. Seal every open door I have left unattended, and close every portal I've unknowingly opened through pain, ignorance, or distraction. Forgive me for the moments I wandered far from you, and gently guide me back into alignment with your will. Let no evil spirit take root in my thoughts, my habits, my emotions, or my home. Fill every space with your presence, every silence with your voice, and every weakness with your strength. I declare that I am not available for darkness, for deception, or for anything beneath my divine nature. I walk now as a vessel of light, a child of the Most High, a warrior of truth. May angels stand guard over me, may discernment rise within me, and may peace rule over every part of my life. I choose to live consciously, speak truthfully, love radically, and trust completely. Wherever I go, let your presence go before me and surround me. Thank you for your mercy, your wisdom, and your constant presence. In your holy name, I rest, rise, and live. Amen. Whenever you feel afraid, unclear, or spiritually heavy, return to this truth. Darkness cannot survive in the presence of awareness, discipline, and divine connection. Keep your lamp lit, keep your soul awake, and never forget. You are not alone. You are deeply seen, eternally loved, and divinely protected.